In one Texas town, families pay water bills to a tank truck that shows up once a month because the pipes never reached their street. Not in 1950, not in 1980. Today, right now, less than a 4-hour drive from gleaming skyscrapers in Houston and Dallas, there are American neighborhoods where children grow up without flushing toilets, without paved roads, and without clean drinking water. And here's the part nobody tells you. You can buy a home in some of these places for the price of a used pickup truck. We're talking $23,000. But the number one town on this list? What's happening there will genuinely make your jaw drop. So stick around, because you will not believe it's even legal. Real quick, before we get into it, if you love digging into the real, hidden Texas that the postcards never show you, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. It is completely free and it helps this channel more than you know. And trust me, you want to stick around all the way to number 1 because it is the most shocking place on this entire list. All right, let's get into it. Number 10, Batesville. We start in Zavala County, in a tiny unincorporated community called Batesville. Now, if you blink while driving through, you'll miss it. Batesville sits in the brush country of southwest Texas, surrounded by spinach fields and mesquite, with just a few hundred people calling it home. Here's why it matters. The median household income in Batesville, according to recent census figures, is around $28,000 a year. Let that sink in. That's the income for an entire household. Not one person, the whole family. And it's roughly a third of the Texas state average. The wider county, Zavala, has a median income that has been measured at around $22,000, making it one of the poorest counties in the entire United States. Batesville was once a proud farming town. In fact, it called itself the spinach capital long before nearby Crystal City stole that title and built a Popeye statue to prove it. But the jobs dried up, the young people left, and what remained was a community surviving on agriculture, and not much else. Here's the surprising twist. Despite the deep poverty, the cost of living here is so low that homes regularly sell for under $30,000. You'll find modest frame houses and aging mobile homes that would cost 10 times as much in Austin, just a few hours up the road. Picture cracked roads baking under the Texas sun, a single small school and front porches where folks still wave at every truck that passes. It's a place where the dollar stretches further than almost anywhere in America, because there's so little money to begin with. Batesville is a window into rural Texas poverty, the kind that's been quietly grinding on for generations while the rest of the state booms. And it's only number 10. Number 9, San Benito. Down in the Rio Grande Valley near the southern tip of Texas sits San Benito. Unlike the tiny dots we've covered so far, this is an actual city with more than 24,000 residents, traffic lights, schools, and a downtown. So why is it on this list? Because for years, San Benito has carried a heartbreaking title. Multiple national studies have ranked it among the poorest cities in the entire United States. One widely reported analysis pegged its poverty rate at over 37%, meaning more than 1 in 3 people here live below the poverty line. San Benito has a rich culture. It's the birthplace of the legendary Tejano musician Freddie Fender, and the town proudly celebrates that heritage. The streets pulse with music, taquerias, and tight-knit family life. But behind the culture is real hardship. Wages are low, steady jobs are scarce, and many families work seasonal agricultural work that disappears for months at a time. Here's the detail that paints the picture. While the median home value here has climbed in recent years, you can still find older homes selling far below the national average. And just outside the city limits, in the surrounding county, the housing situation gets far more extreme, as we'll see shortly. Picture neighborhoods where beautifully painted homes with shrines in the front yard sit right next to crumbling structures with tarps for roofs. Wealth and poverty, side by side on the same block. The twist with San Benito is that it doesn't look poor at first glance. There's pride here, there's color, there's life. But the numbers tell a story the murals don't. This is a community of hardworking people caught in an economy that has never quite given them a fair shot. And remember, we're only getting started. Number 8. Pecos. Out in far west Texas, where the desert stretches flat to the horizon, you'll find Pecos. And Pecos is on this list for a reason completely different from everywhere else we'll visit today, which is exactly what makes it so fascinating. Pecos sits right on top of the Permian Basin, one of the most productive oil fields on planet Earth. When oil prices boom, this town explodes. Workers pour in from across the country, hotels fill up overnight, and the population on paper, around 12,000, can nearly double with temporary workers living in RVs, man camps, and trailers parked anywhere they can find space. So here's the shocking part. Despite sitting on a literal ocean of oil wealth, the everyday living conditions for many in Pecos are rough. During the booms, housing becomes so scarce and so expensive that working men sleep in their trucks. Then the bust comes, prices crash, and the town is left with empty lots, abandoned trailers, and infrastructure that was never built to handle the chaos. The contrast is staggering. You can stand in Pecos and watch billion-dollar oil operations flare gas into the night sky, while families just down the road struggle with poor water quality, dust storms, and roads pounded to pieces by endless heavy trucks. The wealth flows out of the ground and straight out of town into corporate accounts far away. And here's the twist. When the oil market dips, home values in Pecos can collapse and bargain houses appear almost overnight. It's a boom and bust roller coaster that leaves ordinary residents holding the risk while the profits vanish over the horizon. Pecos proves something important. Being near unimaginable wealth doesn't mean any of it ever reaches your front door. Now, those first 3 were just the warm-up. Because everything we've talked about so far, low incomes, rough roads, boom and bust, that's nothing compared to what's coming. The next towns on this list have something the others don't. Entire neighborhoods with no running water and no sewer systems at all. And it only gets crazier from here. Number 7. Eagle Pass. Right on the banks of the Rio Grande, staring across the river at Mexico, sits Eagle Pass, the seat of Maverick County. You've probably heard this name in the news, because it became the center of America's border crisis. But long before the cameras showed up, Eagle Pass was struggling in ways most of the country never noticed. Maverick County has consistently ranked among the lowest income counties in the nation. The median household income in the Eagle Pass area hovers far below the Texas average, and the unemployment rate here has run high for decades, at times nearly double the state level. This is a working-class border town where many families live paycheck to paycheck, and a lot of folks cross the bridge daily for trade, work, and family. Here's what makes it matter. Eagle Pass became a symbol of the national immigration fight, with razor wire, state troopers, and political battle bus playing out on its riverbanks. But the people who actually live there were dealing with deep economic hardship the whole time. Poverty rates well above the national average, limited job options, and an economy heavily dependent on trade that can be choked off whenever the border tightens. Picture this, a historic downtown with beautiful old buildings, a famous golf course that actually crosses back and forth near the river, and just beyond it, neighborhoods where the infrastructure is stretched thin and the paychecks are small. Homes here can be found at prices that would shock a buyer from any major city. The twist with Eagle Pass is that the entire nation has stared at this town for years. But almost nobody talked about the everyday poverty of families who call it home. They became background scenery in someone else's argument. And we're climbing toward number 1. Number 6, Rio Bravo. Just south of Laredo in Webb County sits a small city with a big problem, Rio Bravo. With a little over 4,000 residents, this is one of those border communities that grew up fast and informally, and is still paying the price. The numbers here are stark. Some recent estimates put the median income in Rio Bravo around $20,000, with a poverty rate that has been measured around 30% or higher. The population here is young. The median age is in the mid-20s, which means a whole lot of children are growing up in genuine hardship. Rio Bravo started essentially as a colonia, and that word is going to come up a lot for the rest of this list, so let me explain it. A colonia is an unincorporated settlement, usually near the border, where land was sold cheap to families who then built homes piece by piece, often without the basics most Americans take for granted: paved roads, drainage, clean water, sewer connections. Rio Bravo eventually incorporated as a city to try to fix some of that, but the legacy lingers. Here's the detail that sticks with you. In communities like this, when it rains hard, the unpaved streets turn to thick mud and water with nowhere to drain pools up around homes. Families have built their lives one cinder block at a time, adding a room when they can afford it, sometimes living in the unfinished house for years. The twist is the resilience. These aren't people waiting for a handout. They're people who literally constructed their own neighborhoods from nothing because it was the only path to owning a home. That's the heartbreaking, inspiring reality of Rio Bravo. But the next places, the conditions get even harder to believe. Number 5, Escobars. Welcome to Starr County, which by several measures is the single poorest county in the entire United States. And within it sits the small city of Escobars, with around 2,500 people. The numbers out of Escobars are genuinely difficult to absorb. Census data has placed the median household income here as low as the mid-teens to around $20,000, with a poverty rate that has been reported around 44%. Read that again. Nearly half the population living below the poverty line. These are statistics you'd expect from a struggling nation overseas, not from a city in the second wealthiest state in America. Why does Escobars matter? Because it represents the deepest pocket of poverty in the country, hiding in plain sight. Starr County as a whole has battled this for generations. Low wages, few industries beyond agriculture and government jobs, and geographic isolation way out on the edge of the map, where investment rarely reaches. Picture a community where the horizon is flat brushland in every direction, where the nearest big city is an hour or more away, and where many homes are modest structures, mobile homes, and self-built houses on small lots. The heat in summer is brutal, climbing past 100 degrees, and air conditioning is a luxury that runs up an electric bill many simply can't afford. Here's the twist that makes Escobars remarkable. Despite being statistically one of the poorest places in America, it has one of the lowest crime rates you'll find. These are deeply family-oriented, faith-driven communities where neighbors look out for one another. Poverty here doesn't mean chaos. It means a tight web of families holding each other up. It's a powerful reminder that a low income and a strong community are two very different things. But hold on. Number 1 is to top everything. Okay, take a breath, because we're entering the final stretch. The last 4 places on this list aren't just poor. These are communities where running water, working sewers, and paved roads are not guaranteed in the year we're living in right now. And the number 1 spot involves something so unbelievable, you're going to have to hear it twice. Let's keep going. Number 4, Las Lomas. Back in Starr County, near the town of Rio Grande City, sits one of the most famous colonias in all of Texas, Las Lomas. The name means the hills, And for years, it was one of the largest colonias in the state, home to thousands of people. Las Lomas matters because it became a national symbol of the colonia crisis. For decades, this was a place where families lived without sewer lines. Think about that. Thousands of people, and no municipal sewage system, meaning homes relied on septic tanks or worse, with wastewater that could surface in yards and streets during heavy rain, creating serious health risks. Reports going back years documented children playing near standing wastewater, and the constant threat of disease that comes with it. Here's the picture. Las Lomas grew exactly the way colonias do. Developers sold cheap, undeveloped land to low-income families, often with little oversight, and then walked away. No drainage, no paved roads in many sections, no guarantee of clean water. The families moved in because it was the only land they could afford to own, and then spent years, sometimes decades, fighting local and state governments to get the basic services any other American neighborhood would have had from day one. And here's the hopeful twist. Las Lomas actually became a success story of grassroots organizing. Residents banded together, formed community groups, and pressured the state into bringing in water lines, street lights, and infrastructure improvements. CNN once profiled how this community transformed itself from a cluster of shacks into something far more livable, not because the government rushed to help, but because the people demanded it. Las Lomas shows both the worst and the best of these places. Appalling neglect, met with extraordinary determination. But the next three are even more extreme. Number 3, Cameron Park. Just outside Brownsville, at the very southern tip of Texas, lies Cameron Park, and this one holds a staggering distinction. It has been identified as the largest colonia in the entire United States, with thousands of residents packed into an unincorporated pocket that sits right up against the city limits. Cameron Park matters because of the sheer scale of the poverty. This isn't a tiny forgotten settlement. It's a large community where, according to neighborhood data, the share of children living in poverty has been reported at over 65%. 65%. That means roughly 2 out of every 3 kids growing up here are living below the poverty line. It ranks among the most economically distressed neighborhoods in the entire country. Here's the maddening part. Cameron Park sits literally inside Brownsville's city limits geographically, yet for much of its history, it remained unincorporated, meaning it fell through the cracks, not fully served by the city, struggling to get the infrastructure, drainage, and services a normal neighborhood receives. Families here have dealt with flooding, inadequate drainage, and substandard housing for decades. Picture rows of modest homes, some neat and well-kept with flowers out front, others patched together with whatever materials a family could afford, lining streets that flood when the Gulf storms roll in. This is hurricane country. And when the water rises, a community without proper drainage suffers first and worst. And yet, the twist again is the humanity. Cameron Park is overwhelmingly made up of hardworking families, many of them homeowners who scraped and saved to own their little piece of America. They built a community where there was supposed to be nothing. The poverty is real, the neglect is real, but so is the pride. Now, let's get to the top 2, because this is where it gets unbelievable. Number 2, Sparks. Out west now in El Paso County, where the desert meets the mountains, sits a colonia called Sparks. And Sparks earns the number 2 spot for a reason that sounds almost impossible in modern America. Floods, dust, and the constant fight for the absolute basics of survival. Sparks sits in an arroyo. That's a dry desert wash that's bone dry most of the year. But when the rare desert storm hits, that arroyo becomes a raging channel of water. Back in 1999, a thunderstorm centered right over this area. caused flooding so severe it shut down Interstate 10 and tore through the community. Imagine building your home in a place where the ground itself turns into a river a few times a decade, sweeping away everything you own. Why does it matter? Because Sparks represents the West Texas version of the colonia crisis, and it's brutal in a different way. Out here, water is the enemy when it floods, and water is the desperate need every other day of the year. Many El Paso County colonias historically lacked reliable access to clean drinking water and proper sewage, sitting in a harsh high desert climate where summer temperatures soar and winter nights drop below freezing. Picture homes across a dusty desert flat, no shade for miles, the Franklin Mountains in the distance, and roads that turn to dust in the wind and mud in the rare rain. Families here have spent years petitioning for flood control, for water lines, for the simple right to be safe in their own homes. The twist? Even after disasters, people stay. They rebuild, because for many, this cheap desert land was the only path to ever owning a home. They weigh the risks of the flood against the dream of the deed, and they choose the dream. That's how powerful homeownership is to these families. But none of this prepares you for number one. Number one, Cochran. And here it is, the number one spot. A colonia in El Paso County called Cochran. And what happened here is so hard to believe that I need you to really hear it. For decades, and I mean decade, the families of Cochran lived without running water. No tap, no faucet you could trust, no water lines reaching their homes in the United States of America. And this wasn't fixed in some distant past. Construction to finally bring running water to Cochran only began in recent years, after generations of broken promises from officials who said help was coming and then never came. Here's the statistic that should stop you cold. Before the water project arrived, families in Cochran were getting by on an estimated 50 to 100 gallons of water per month for entire households of up to 8 people. To put that in perspective, the average American uses more water than that in a single day. These families had to haul water in, ration every drop, and make impossible choices about cooking, cleaning, and bathing. Children grew up not knowing what it felt like to turn on a tap and have clean water just come out. Picture it, a cluster of homes in the high desert outside El Paso, the mountains in the distance, and families driving miles to fill jugs and tanks because the pipes simply stopped before they reached their street. Not because of a war, not because of a natural disaster, but because no one with the power to fix it ever bothered to, until a nonprofit and community pressure finally forced the issue. And here's the twist that ties this entire list together. Cochran isn't in some far-flung corner of the developing world. It's in Texas, the energy capital of America, a state with one of the largest economies on Earth. The same state that exports billions in oil and gas left a community of its own citizens without the single most basic resource for human life for decades. That is the shocking truth at the heart of this list. Third world living conditions hiding in the shadow of first world wealth. That's why Cochran is number one, not because of what people did wrong, but because of how long the rest of us looked away. So there you have it. 10 Texas communities, from the spinach fields of Batesville, to the oil-soaked streets of Pecos, to the desert homes of Cochran, where running water only just arrived. 10 places where, yes, you can still buy a home for next to nothing, but where that low price comes with a story most Texans never hear. Behind every one of these towns are hardworking, proud families who built lives out of almost nothing, and who deserve to be seen. Now I want to hear from you. Which of these towns shocked you the most? Was it Cochran, living without running water? Cameron Park with 2/3 of its kids in poverty? Or somewhere else entirely? Drop it in the comments below. I read them all, and I genuinely want to know. If this video opened your eyes to a side of Texas you'd never seen, do me a favor. Smash that like button and subscribe to Texas Knows so you don't miss what's coming next. We've got more hidden towns, forgotten history, and untold stories headed your way. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.